All right, Madridistas, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to Madrid. Listen, it's quite late at night here, but we just finished the last matches in the Champions League. We now know the final 8 in the Champions League in the quarterfinals. I want to give you my thoughts on that ahead of the draw on Friday, and also give you guys just a few simple snippets in terms of what YouTubers here in Madrid have been talking about. So we'll talk briefly about Camavinga, Güler, and then a little bit about the whole league, Tebas, Movistar, Barca, ongoing crap. All right, let's get started. Welcome back. Let's talk about the Champions League draw on Friday. Now, I'm going to lump the remaining teams into two groups. Now, before I say that, let me say, to win this competition, and nobody knows what it takes better than us, but you can't take anything for granted. There is no such thing as a simple rival. Anything can happen. We learned our lesson with the 1-4 with Ajax a few years ago. You might remember the Chelsea situation a couple of years back. We play a great game in Stamford Bridge, winning 3-1. Then we come back to the Bernabeu, and we find ourselves in the second half down 0-3. So, and of course, it was one of the great comebacks that year. But you can't take anything for granted. Real Madrid is typically at its most vulnerable when it thinks things are under control. We tend to get complacent and get ourselves into trouble. So no team is going to be easy. But that said, I'm going to put it into two groups. So the second group, which I think are the 4 teams that are probably more manageable, and let's put them up now. So I think Borussia Dortmund, Atletico de Madrid, Arsenal, and Barca. And I'll just very briefly tell you why I think so. Borussia, look, very aggressive, kind of German team. They're not as good this year as they have been in previous seasons, but very difficult. German teams are always quite aggressive, very, very strong at home. They've got a very loud, energetic home crowd. So, but I think that all in all, I'm somebody that believes in football pedigree and football legacy and football history, and I think it really matters because I think psychology is very important in sports. And I think that Borussia Dortmund, just doesn't have the same level of experience we do in the competition. I think whenever we play the Champions League, we really raise our level. So I just think Borussia is probably the team that if we had to choose, we would rather get, with all due respect, of course. Now, Atletico de Madrid is in this category, and now they've beaten us twice this year. So it might surprise you to see them in the group that I would consider the more, I wouldn't say easy, but more reasonable teams. But I just think that when it comes to Europe, everything changes. I think that the stakes are different. So if we were to run into Atletico de Madrid, I don't think that they would be thinking about the 2 times they beat us this year. I think they would be thinking about the 2 times we beat them in a Champions League final. And I just think psychologically, in Europe, I just think it's a different ball game. The stakes are higher. And, I trust that our sort of experience and our better skill level would come through. Now, Arsenal, a lot of you might be surprised to see Arsenal there, considering, where they are in the Premier League, which is such an amazing league. But, I watch Arsenal play every weekend, and I think they play really wonderful football, especially in the midfield. But I do think that they lack a bit of teeth up front. I mean, I always have the feeling that they're very creative, but they don't have as much bite in that final third. And, I just think it's a team also that has a bit of a softness about it. It's not, they don't have quite the intensity. I don't know if you guys watched the Man City-Liverpool last weekend. That was one of the best matches I've seen in years. And the level of intensity of those two, that was just incredible. Arsenal, I think, are, they play a sort of softer midfield kind of touch the ball type play. And I just don't find them as threatening as some of the other teams, certainly Man City. Now, Barca, look, it's interesting because Barca, I think, obviously is a much weaker rival than, say, Man City, obviously, or Bayern Munich or PSG. But it's funny because when you think about what rival you want to get in the next round, your mind plays tricks on you. So, Barca is obviously a much weaker side than, say, Man City. But losing to Barca would just kill me. It would be infinitely more painful than losing to Man City. So your mind kind of plays tricks, but to be perfectly reasonable, I think that Barca in their current state is not nearly as threatening as the teams that I would put in Group 1. So let's talk about Group 1 now, the hardest ones, I think. It's these three, Man City, Bayern Munich, PSG, in that order. PSG, I think, are probably the third strongest in this group. And honestly, I don't find that their midfield play is that good. And I have watched him play a few times this year and in the previous round. But the Mbappe effect is just devastating because he is a player that is just impossible to defend. And the last time he played against Real Madrid, he scored so many goals, and a couple of them were disallowed just miraculously by a very small margin due to offsides. But I'm worried about PSG. I do think that overall they're a very dangerous team and not a team I would want to run into in the quarterfinals. Bayern Munich. Okay, Bayern Munich is not what they used to be. They're having a notoriously they're going through a very rough patch. But, they are always physical. They're always very good at home. And they have this guy who's scoring goals like there's no tomorrow. So it's just a team that, historically we had a very physical rivalry with them. We've always had very, very tense elimination rounds with Bayern Munich. And I just think they're always a very thorny side and quite physical. And it's just not the kind of play that we enjoy playing against. But let's move on to the team that is the most dangerous, that I don't want to see even in a painting. I think the best team in the world right now, and a team that has outplayed us 2 years in a row. What happened 2 years ago was quite miraculous. I think Man City, were better in both matches. And you saw what happened last year. They just decimated us. Now, if you go look at the lineup in Man City, it is really, really disturbing. Okay, if you start from the back, Kyle Walker, I think he's one of the best right backs in the world, just so gritty and so fast. Rodri, just absolutely, amazing. And then the midfield is just insulting, right? Bernardo Silva, De Bruyne, and Foden. These are three of the best midfielders in the world. And of course, up front, you have Haaland, which is, it's just this lineup is, and we haven't even discussed Grealish. Look, this is a very, very good team. They've spent billions of dollars and many, many years playing a consistent style of play. Now, I'll tell you the reason that I find Real Madrid struggles with Man City. When we play against English sides, and here's my theory about this. When you watch the Premier League, it's very intense, very fast, very physical, but they turn the ball over a lot. It's sort of, they play very high intensity, they lose the ball. And the other team plays very high intensity, loses the ball. Now, usually, if you're better on the ball, you're more skillful, you can counteract that physicality. And typically against English teams, they're very uncomfortable if we keep the ball for long spells. And we've been able to beat English teams, fairly regularly because of our style of play. Now, the problem with Man City is that they're not just physical, and they have the physicality of the Premier League, but they're just really good on the ball. They can hold the ball for very long spells. They press very well. And then when they get the ball, they don't just turn it over. So the combination of technique and power and speed, that's something that we struggle with. And Man City has the combination of those two things better than any club in the world, I think. So anyway, those are my thoughts in terms of the draw. Like I say, Man City is, I think, definitely favored to win the competition. And it's going to be tough. Now, listen, we are Real Madrid. We're capable of anything. But those are my honest thoughts about the rivals. Okay, now let's move on to the Spanish Liga. I want to let you guys know what people are talking about these days in YouTube channels, etc. People are still talking about Camavinga. That performance the other day, which I mentioned in my prior video, that was one of the best performances I have seen in a very long time. In my player ratings, I gave him a 9. It would have been a 10 if one of his shots had gone in. But he's an extraordinary player. He just has never played a bad game. I just don't remember a bad game. Even playing left back, he was outstanding, and playing in the pivot position. Some of the discussion around Camavinga these days, the YouTubers kind of have panel discussions about this. Is he better in the pivot position, sort of just in front of the defense, or is he a little bit better further up? And I do think my impression is that when he plays further back in the kind of pivot just in front of the defense, he tends to play better when he has a little bit of support, with kind of a Camavinga next to him, Tchouaméni next to him. But when he plays a little bit further up and he gets involved with a little bit more space, distributing play, that's when I think we get the best out of him. But, the other day he was everywhere on the pitch. And like I say, people are still talking about that performance. And then, secondly, Arda Güler, they're also talking about Arda a lot because if you think about it, in his 2 appearances, he's had very, very few minutes, but on both occasions, he's had an impact. I mean, he created a penalty out of nothing in his first appearance, and he scored a magnificent goal in the second one, with very few minutes as well. So we're very impressed. I think we all really want to see more of this player. And one of the fears that we have is that, we don't, a lot of talented young players that have come have gone on loan to other places, and others have managed to stay. And I think we really want him to be one of the ones that stays. He's had a very tricky year with injuries at the beginning of the season, 3 in a row. But, I hope that this goal will give him the confidence to kind of be patient. And I hope it'll kind of incentivize Ancelotti to give him more minutes. But that's been another source of conversation here in Madrid. And then the last thing I'm going to leave you guys with is just, the issues with the league. And a couple of things happened. Tebas, the president of the federation, came out with a statement sort of threatening people, anybody that's watching football through piracy, so not through the Movistar network. He came out and made a statement saying that, there's going to be a law and people are going to go to prison. Just a very, very threatening tone, very condescending tone, very authoritative tone. And, don't forget, football in Spain is very expensive compared to other European countries. I think it's like 120 euros a month, to watch La Liga. It's something really, really high. I mean, in the U.S., you pay $10 for ESPN and you can watch La Liga. I mean, people in Spain pay 12 times that. So it's, there is a piracy issue, but the way that he came out and talked about it was as if the law had already been passed, which it hasn't even been discussed, but he was speaking with this kind of condescending authority, and it just feels like another attempt to kind of control, and it feels like he's in bed with Movistar, who of course is in bed with Barca. It's just the whole thing is a really kind of unpleasant. And speaking of Movistar, and I did want to mention this, if you guys saw the Barcelona-Napoli match here in Spain the other night, the commentators, it's just, if you thought Barca TV was dead, it's not. It's just that now it's called Movistar. It's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, not just the way they talk about the players. So Barca has a very, great young center back. His name is Cubarsí, had a great game. But the way that they talk about this guy as if he's like the next Ballon d'Or. And by the way, Cubarsí committed a penalty, I don't know if you got signed on Osimhen, which, I mean, he got late to the ball and stepped on his foot. And, I mean, it looked like a penalty to me. I think 70% of the time it would have been a penalty. But the commentators just made nothing of it, like, wow, it's up for discussion, if it's, the narrative is just so obvious that Movistar is just in bed with Barca and Tebas is in bed. It's like this little triangle of death that's destroying La Liga. But anyway, I just wanted to give you, my thoughts on the draw and some of the latest gossip here in Madrid. But anyway, I'll give you guys, when we find out who we're up against, I'll give you guys another video and let you know my thoughts. But I just wanted to give you guys an update. All right, so I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. And a la Madrid.